Welcome to Hello Me, It's Me, Vulnerable AF, a podcast hosted by Nikki D. Lovely. That's really just her diary disguised as a podcast, but who cares? You're here for it. Join in as she addresses her self-reflections on life, love, and dating, and gives us all the tea by being more vulnerable than she ever has, with herself and the world. So let's get started in today's episode with Nikki D. Lovely, already in progress.
Why do I do this? Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hello Me, It's Me, Vulnerable as F. Last week we talked about ghosting, being ghosted again. We talked about avoidant discard, which is basically a worse form of ghosting because typically what happens in avoidant discard is you're actually speaking with someone on a regular basis, and then they just drop off the face of the earth, where you're left to assume what the hell just happened, right? At least usually with ghosting, it's like people you were barely talking to, people who just kind of leave you on red that you may not have actually met. But avoidant discard is when you're ghosted by someone where you thought things were really going well, and then they just discard you. And you're like, what the heck was that? So anyway, in my last episode, I shared about this guy that had love bombed me. And then at the end of it, he was just kind of like, and I'm done. And that was the end of it. So if you did not check out the episode, make sure you go back and check that episode out. This week, we will be talking about getting back out there after the discard. Getting back out there. We're not wasting any time here. Okay. Now, let me first precursor this by saying that you do need to make sure that you have addressed all concerns, you've gotten out all emotions. I don't recommend just getting back out there after someone has ghosted you or after you've been in a relationship per se for 3 to 4 months trying to get to know somebody and you really like that person. I think you really do need to take the time that you need in order to get yourself back together. Pour into yourself, make sure you get that cry out, make sure you talk to friends, make sure you do things to become active. And once you've done all those things in order to get back to yourself, then I believe it is time to kind of go back out there and test the waters again. But I also want you to be careful because when you go back out there and test the waters, once you've been love bombed by someone, it's really hard to kind of come down from that and have like that realistic expectation. Because from what I have found, when you've been love bombed, they show you this romantic view, right? It's called courting for a reason. Courting is really to make someone kind of fall in love with you. But it's all based off of acts, not so much getting to know the person. If you think about someone just bringing you flowers, opening the door for you, those are all acts. They're all acts of kindness, acts of chivalry. They say chivalry isn't dead, but those are acts. Anyone can do those things. It's not really the person. Even someone who's, kind of crass can do enough of that to make you think that they're a better person. The question is, are they able to do that consistently and for how long? Which is why I always say make sure you go at least 3 to 4 months. Let's just kind of get down to the nitty gritty. I have gone back out into the dating scene because my thing is this. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Number 1, I don't want someone who's not willing to communicate with me. Number 2, I already know they're emotionally unavailable and avoidant. I don't need that in my life. And number 3, I know what I want and what I'm looking for, and it's not that. So once I realize that that person who I got attached to is not the person that I thought they were, they just showed me the courting or the chivalry and not the actual person. So sometimes you have to be able to separate acts of kindness from who this person really is. And sometimes there are going to be signs. There were signs in mine. When I go back and think about it, there were actual signs. Especially, there was a story he told me where this lady had fallen, and I asked her, did he help her up? And he's like, no, that's not my lady. I didn't help her up. I called her man to come get her. So I was like, wait, what? Any genuine person, if they see somebody fall, they're going to help them up. So that was one of my red flags there. But anyway, just go back and tell yourself or replay the things that you may have missed, and that can help you too. So, moving on from that situation, I've lived and I've learned. This is probably the second time I've been ghosted by an avoidant or discarded by an avoidant. And now I'm just like, okay, back on the horse. Probably take me about a week or so to kind of get over it. I allow myself to do all the things, the crying and all the going out and then talking through it and talking about it. That helped a lot. So make sure you do that. I journaled, if you're looking for what to do after that occurs. And now we are dating again. And that has been interesting because, again, like I said, one thing you're going to want to be careful of when dating after being love bombed is try to compare the love bombing date to what is more normal, what is more realistic in a date. And because there are some aspects of the love bombing that we do like, of course, which is the flowers or, the grandiose gestures, the chivalry, the opening of the doors, the future faking, all that stuff sounds great because it sounds like it came from a movie. Because guess what? It did. He wrote that shit. He wrote that stuff in his head and he fed it to you and you believed it, right? So now we're going to go more realistic. We're just going to tone it down a notch. I'm not saying not to expect flowers. I'm not saying not to expect chivalry. I do still would like to see that in someone, but I also want it to be genuine. So we want to be careful of just like accepting what we see at face value and making sure we get to know someone. So right now, back in the dating pool, I don't want to say I'm lowering my expectations, but I'm trying to make sure that I am not comparing the love bombing person to the new person that I'm dating. And it's funny because the first person right out the gate that I start dating, or let me not say dating because I didn't start dating him, but I decided to go on a date with him. This person was definitely, unequivocally, without a doubt, anxious attachment. And probably along with some other stuff, like maybe manic, depressive. I don't know. My dude had a couple of issues. And I should not have known because I had one phone conversation with him. I found out we were from the same state of Mississippi, and I decided to give it a shot because I was like, oh, we went to the same school. We're from the same state. We already have quite a bit in common, right? So I call him up the day before the date. We set a time. We did not set a place. So the day of the date, I'm like, okay, we set a time, but we haven't said where we're going. So I text him and I'm like, where are we going? Men, take note, please, because one thing a woman, or let me speak for myself, one thing I would really like from a man, and several other people I know have said the same thing, is taking the lead when it comes to just proposing a time and a place and a date and where the date is going to happen, right? We don't have to agree to the time or the place, but just throw it out there. Just throw it out there and see what she says. She can switch it up, change it up however much she can, but just give some place, right? Show some direction. We want to be lit. I didn't get that. So I said time. He goes, I'm like, where are we meeting? He tells me a city, which is in between where he stays and where I stay. I'm like, okay. Even still, I still don't have a place. And that irks me because I'm like, you're coming from one place, I'm coming from another place. Maybe I get off my exit sooner than you. So I find the place, I send it to him, and it's just a coffee shop because he wants to do a coffee shop. Halfway there, I look at the coffee shop and I realize that it's closing at 3:00. At this time, it's like 2:47. So I text him and I say, I just realized the place that I picked closes at 3. And then he texts back, what does that mean? Are you canceling the date? I'm like, no. And then I'm thinking like, hold up. Like, who said anything about canceling the date? I didn't say anything, but that's like the nervous anxiousness I felt from the text. Finally, he texts back. Like 2 minutes later, he goes, and I'm driving, so I couldn't respond right away. He texts back, we could go somewhere else. So I just heart the third one. Because I'm like, yeah, exactly. Or we could go somewhere else. So he's like, okay, cool. So we get there. He says he's already there. He brought his dog because his dog was sick and he wanted to watch him. And I said that was fine. We could just kind of like, walk around this little area. And when I got there, he already had a drink. So I'm thinking he couldn't even wait to order a drink. I guess we're doing like coffee date. Like what is it, 50-50? Which I'm not a big fan of for coffee dates. For coffee dates. I understand if you kind of want to do it for dinner. Like, I don't really want to owe you much, so I'll go half and half with you. Even though I personally don't like 50-50 dates, period. I do still think, if a man wants to date, he should be able to afford to pay. And if not, he shouldn't be dating. But that is my personal opinion. Same for women. I make sure that I can pay for wherever we go, so that if I need to walk out, I can. So it's not like I just think one way for one sex and the other. I do think it should go both ways. Anyway, moving on. He has a coffee and I'm like, okay, you're gonna get your coffee? I'm gonna go get mine. Thinking in my head, this man better not let me get up and get this coffee. This man better not let me get up all the way up to this thing and get this coffee. This man better not let me, because he's from Mississippi. In Mississippi, I don't know if y'all know, but Southern boys are supposed to be chivalrous, gentlemen, like, let me get it because I got it. Type. Don't let this man not get up and get this coffee. That's what I was thinking. I get up. My guy goes, are you going to go order you a coffee? I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, I got it. For y'all, the relief I felt, because I was honestly about to write. I hate to say I was going to write this man off, but I'm already thinking it's just a coffee date. It's very low investment. I didn't ask you to take me to a 5-star restaurant. You can buy a coffee. If you can't buy me a coffee, I don't know what we're doing. Okay? Anyway, he pulled through. My boy pulled through, and he got me the coffee. I was like, okay, I don't have to write you off. So I sit there. He goes, you actually look better than your pictures. And I'm like, oh, well, thank you. And he's like, unlike me, of course, I'm sure I look fugly as fuck. I'm like, well, hold on a second. Wait, hold on. What? He's like, oh, I'm sure I look at this ugly. This wasn't the face you were expecting. I was like, no, you look like your pictures. And he did. He looked like his pictures. I was just kind of taken aback that he was like downgrading himself. Not attractive, men. Don't downgrade yourself at all. I don't like it for women or men. Don't ever downgrade yourself. Remember who you are. Anyway, I tell him not to say that. I'm like, don't say that. And he's like, well, it's true. And it's like, no, it's not true. So don't say it, because we are the things that we believe and we are the things that we say. And I don't want you to say it. So he's like, oh, okay, all right. So we're talking for a little bit and he goes, why are you sitting so far away? Why don't you come closer? You should come sit here. Come sit close to me. And I'm thinking, I'm good where I'm at. I wasn't that far away from him. I was at the seat right next to him. And he was like on this couch. And I was like, whatever. I should have said, oh, I'm fine here. But I was just like, whatever. This dude probably hasn't seen a female in a while. So I'll sit close. Whatever. I'll sit next to him. And I sit next to him and, he's like, oh, you're so pretty. And thank you for coming out with me. I'm like, oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me, I guess. Thank you for agreeing to the date. I don't know what to say in this situation, but I just say, thank you. Okay. And so 3:00 rolls around and I ask him, do you want to walk around? Because we were in a new city, both of us. And I was like, let's walk around and explore the city with the dog. And he's like, yeah, let's do that. We start walking off and he goes, you really are beautiful. I was like, thank you. And then he goes, I really hope this works out. It's like, And he goes, and I like the fact that you're here with me. And I said, I like the fact that you're so open about your feelings. He goes, really, you do? Because most girls don't, and they'll ghost and block me. I don't know why he had to share that. I don't know why he said that, but I was just, okay. In my brain, I'm thinking I could probably see why, But I was like, I'm thinking, why is that? And he's like, oh, I don't think they like me coming, being so forthcoming. And that's when I said, have you heard of attachment styles? And have you heard of future faking and love bombing? And he goes, no, I've never heard of any of those terms. And I was like, well, sometimes it can come across as like future faking or like disingenuine because you just met me and you don't really know me. So for you to tell me all these things about how, you like me? And he actually, I forgot to mention this, but I had told him I wanted to go back to Mississippi. And he goes, well, don't go without me. You promise you won't go without me? We can go together. Like started throwing himself into the future planning of going to Mississippi. And I said, sometimes I can come across as, future faking or love bombing. He's like, well, I don't think that. I think that I just like to think that I'm being optimistic. I mean, honestly, I would really want this to work out. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, okay. And that's how you see it. Then fine. It's at this point, he's like, reaches to hold my hand. I forgot, because in the beginning, he did like this number where he put his elbow out for me to grab his upper arm. And I was like, okay, dude, whatever. I'll walk with you like that. But towards the end, we probably had walked a mile at this point. Then he like grabs my hand and he wants to hold my hand. He's like, it's okay if I hold your hand? Oh my gosh. I know. This is where boundaries come in, and this is where you say, you know what? I'd rather not. I'm just getting to know you. But for me, and I guess even in situations for a lot of women, he already seemed a little manic, and I didn't want to upset him to the point where I'm like having to deal with a crazy person all the way. I thought I could just get through the date. So I'm like, you know what? I'll hold this. Don't ask me why. I said I would hold his hand. And at that time, it didn't seem like a big deal. It didn't seem like that big of a deal. Whatever. I'm going to have to be very careful of myself in the future. But I held his hand. We walked around, and towards the end, he's like, okay, well, I guess we're going to go our separate ways. And he's like, he asked me what I plan on doing. And I said, well, I'm probably going to go get something to eat. And I feel, men, here's another piece of advice. If a woman says I'm probably going to get something to eat, definitely offer to feed her. If she's interested, she'll say yes. We can talk some more. And if she's not, she'll just say, oh no, I got some other stuff I need to do, whatever. I typically start out with a coffee drink and then hope that if it does better, or like actual alcoholic drinks, and think that if it does better, then we can then go on to like dinner date or something. So he, surprisingly, actually was a little surprised. He goes, I'll feed you. I can feed you. I'm like, no, it's okay. I got it. I'm just going to go over here. And he's like, well, what is it that you want? What do you want to eat? And I'm like, I'm probably thinking steak. And usually for me, I think when guys propose like coffee dates and stuff right off the bat, I don't know why, but I just assume that, they're trying to keep things low budget. And I usually try to be respectful of their budgeting or whatever, especially on the first date. And I don't think about it too much. I'm just like, I can afford to go get my own food. I don't have to have company. I can just go enjoy my time to myself. I worked on myself enough in order to be able to do that, right? In this situation, he says, I'll feed you. I'm like, at this point, he hadn't turned me off completely. And I'm just like, okay, cool. We can go get something to eat. And so we Google the phone. We go out to eat. We sit down. We're eating. And he asked me, he says, where do you want me to sit? And you can tell he's a little nervous. He's like, wait, where do you want me to sit? I'm like, what do you mean? Where are you? He's like, do you want me to sit beside you? Or do you want me to sit across from you? And I'm like, I'm thinking, listen, the way he's saying it, there's definitely a right or wrong answer, right? In my brain, I'm like, you better say the right answer, because if you don't say the right answer, this dude's probably going to slip off. So I go, how about you sit across from me? I'm tired of holding this man's hand. How about you sit across from me so I can see your face? I would like to look at your face. And he goes, really? Okay. Right answer. So obviously there was a right answer, and I said the right answer. I was happy. He had a smile on his face. I was like, good. Because like I said, if I had said sit next to him, he probably would have been fine with that too. But it was me saying I need to look at your face. I think that got it for him. Anyway, he sits down. We actually have a genuinely good conversation. Except for when he gets to the point about like, I hope we're still together 6 months from now. And at this point, I'm like, this guy is really like seeking validation, and he just seemed lonely. He said he hadn't had a date, I think, in 3 years since COVID. So, this is 2000. Woo-hoo-hoo! My goodness. So, I'm going to be nice and get a man 3 years, okay? What I'm finding is it's a lonely epidemic out here because this is the second guy I've been with who hasn't had a date in like 2 or 3 years. I don't know what these women are doing to these men. They're not giving these men any dates. And what am I doing? Anyway, I'm giving too many men too many dates. I was trying to get my mind off the other guy and kind of get back out there, but I just picked the wrong one. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's end this date because this is what I'm trying to do. I'm already jumping ahead of myself to the next thing because I'm trying to get out of this date so fast. We finish eating, and then again, he puts his dog in the car and he goes, "Would you mind sitting in the car with me for a little while so that I really want to get to know you a little bit more? I don't want the night to end." At this point, I think it was like from 2 to 5-ish. So it'd been 3 hours, which to me is more than enough time, especially when you're starting off as a coffee date. So I say, I give you 5 minutes. Like 5 minutes in the car. My car was right next to his. I was just like, whatever. I really wanted to end it at this point. But I was like, this guy is craving for some attention. Let me just people please in this moment. Even though I hate people pleasing, let me people please in this moment. And I do not, this is what not to do, okay? My boundaries should have been, I enjoyed your company tonight, but I really need to get going, okay? That's what I should have did. I know. That's what I should have did. I should have said, I thank you for dinner, but I guess to get out of here, right? But no, that's not what I did. What I did, I sat in the car. That's what I did too. I sat in the car. And I don't even think we talked much except for the fact that he talked and he said that he really was looking forward to having a good woman in his life. And he felt behind any great man was a good woman. And that's kind of what he needed, was that extra push. And as long as he was very specific, as long as I was behind him, he felt he could do anything. And he was very excited about seeing me again. So much so, he asked, "When can I see you again?" And it is at that moment that I know I need to make sure that the date that he can see me again is at least a week out, so that there can be some space between the both of us. You go, how about next weekend? He's like, "Ooh, I was really hoping for sooner." I go, "How soon were you thinking? Like Wednesday?" Because this is Sunday, I think. He goes, "Ooh, I was kind of thinking tomorrow." So wait, this was Saturday. He's like, "I was kind of thinking tomorrow." Woo! I was like, "No, sorry, I can't do tomorrow." I was like, "But, we can't do Wednesday." I'm trying to help him out here. I'm trying to help just a little. I'm like, 4 days? Maybe I can create some distance between him and 4 days. I'm feeling the anxiousness come while we're in the car. Right? I'm feeling this attachment come and stick to me while we're sitting there in the car. And he's like, "Oh, well, I guess. Kind of like if that's what I have to take." And I'm thinking, what the heck, dude? I don't owe you anything. But anything I need to do to get out this car at this point, right? Because I done put myself in a car, which was another stupid idea. But again, he wasn't out to harm me or anything, I didn't think. But of course, you don't know, right? Jeffrey Dahmer. Anyway, Ted Bundy. Yes, I know. Anyway, moving on. I got out the car safely, left, and I'm thinking, okay, cool. I'm away from that. Now I can really kind of pull this together and figure out what it is I really see for this, which I saw nothing, honestly. I could tell he's very anxious. He's already love bombing me. I can tell he's missing. He's missing interaction. He's lonely. I can't be all that for him. I know this right off the bat. I've saved enough people to know I need to save myself sometimes. So I was like, I need to save myself from this. He texts me, a day goes by, and because he was so much on the date, I didn't text him. It was too much. I needed my space. I'm a former avoidant, and as a former avoidant, I need my space. I always have. Like, I don't think that's one thing that's going to change for me. I like having time to myself to think. I like you being a little bit away and then coming to me, but not too much too soon. Like, I'm not that person, right? He texts me the next morning. He's like, is everything okay? I'm thinking, yeah, everything's okay. He's like, cool, I miss you. I'm thinking, I don't know you enough to miss you, but I'm thinking, oh, is that so? Whenever someone gives me like something like that and I don't feel the same feelings for them, I find a way to make sure that I like kind of counter it back to them. So I'll say something like, oh, you do you? Or how so? Or what is it that you miss? Because honestly, I really wanted to see if he really missed me, because I really feel like I could have been like a blow-up doll to him. I could have been anybody, honestly. He just feel like he needed to give his attention to something. So I said, what is it about me that you missed? And then he said, I just really enjoyed our conversation yesterday. So, not an off-the-wall comment. But, we did have a good conversation the day before. So I was like, okay, good. So he goes, I really wish you were here right now. And I'm thinking, I just told him that I had something to do the next day, that I couldn't see him that day. And he's like, I would love to cook for you. I would love for you to come to my house and I cook for you. Now, first off, I hate that as an excuse for trying to have a date. That is not getting me to your house, especially for a second date. I'm not coming to your house. I don't care how well you cook. I hate when men say, oh, let me cook for you at my house. I understand it's intimate. I eventually would like to come to your house to cook. I really would. But for me, that's going to be like a fourth or fifth date. After I've gotten to know you, after we've talked some more, after we've decided, like, do we want to be exclusive possibly, or we have told each other our feelings for each other. I'm not doing that date one or date two. So at this point, but I don't just come straight out and say it. He says I'm cooking dinner. And so I just go, well, what are you cooking? He texts back, halibut. At this point, I think I'm doing other things. I'm just like, this conversation isn't really going anywhere. I like it when they're not like dead end questions to things or like dead end answers. He just said halibut. He didn't say halibut. Does that sound like something you would like? Or halibut, what's your favorite fish? He just said halibut. Okay? That's all he said was halibut. My goodness. Anyway, probably about, let's say 16 to 17 minutes later, which, he texts me. He goes, if you didn't like me, you could have just said that. Or if you don't see this going anywhere, you could have just said that or something. Something along the lines of, I guess you're not interested in talking to me anymore. I just put question mark, question mark, question mark. Like, what? And I said, the last thing you said was halibut. Basically, I don't know how you wanted me to respond to that. And then he responds back with like, I thought this was going somewhere. Obviously it's not. If you didn't want to talk to me anymore, you could have just said that. Just basically exploded from halibut to like, I'm ready to end this, whatever he thought we had going on. And I told him it sounded like he needed to calm down. I'm trying to be patient here. Most people I know would have just blocked and deleted. I actually have a Threads account. Instagram or Facebook has Threads, which I have thoroughly enjoyed using lately. And I've been posting my dates on my Threads account. And in that account, I did post some of those screenshots of that conversation. And people were like, get rid of this dude. This dude's crazy. Block, delete. Obviously, there's something wrong. I would leave. All those different things. And I chose to sit there and have a conversation because I knew that there was something a little off. And I tried to be gracious because there was once a time when I, too, also had an anxious attachment style. So if you know anything about attachment styles, there's anxious, avoidant, and there's secure. There's also another one I think is called dissociative, but I just go with the three main ones, right? And with those, I used to be avoidant. For years, I was super avoidant. I used to hurt people. I hated that about myself, and that's why I took myself off the dating market. because I knew that there was something wrong. I was like, and it's not these people, because I'm keep coming across the same thing over and over again. So it can't be them. And when they say the common denominator is me, it has to be me, right? And coming out of being avoidant after years of therapy, I started dating again, and I realized I had become the opposite of avoidant, which is anxious. And there was this guy I was talking to, and lo and behold, I was attracting avoidance. I was trauma bonding with avoidance. I enjoyed having avoidance around me because avoidants don't like to talk about their issues. They don't like to be vulnerable. And for me, just coming out of being an avoidant, I was like, oh, this is safe. We don't have to talk about our issues, except for the fact that I'm coming out of being avoidant. I've gone to therapy. I've done all my work. Now I want to talk about the work, right? Avoidants ain't like, I don't want to talk about this. I'm still hiding from my issues. I'm still hiding from my problems. Why are you bringing this up? And then that's when there's a clash and the relationship doesn't go anywhere, because the avoidants are runners. You want to talk about the issues. Avoidants like, they're conflict averse. I don't want to talk about the issues. Bye. You go talk about the issues by yourself. And without any vulnerability from both parties, the relationship is going to go dead. It's just going to go sour. You're not going to really know someone until you're able to get into their vulnerable parts, right? That all being said, I was being considerate to him because I was dating this guy. And if you go back to some of my older podcasts, one of the guys I was dating, I was very much anxious because he was always busy. And avoidants will always find whatever they can to keep themselves busy, to not have to deal with your emotions or to deal with their emotions. Let's be real. They're really trying to not deal with their own emotions. And for me, as an anxious at that time, he was making me anxious, which a lot of avoidants will make even the most secure person anxious. He was making me anxious because he was avoiding the conversations. He was avoiding the conflict. He was avoiding, basically the whatever issues that we had at the time that I wanted to talk about. They're like, oh, this isn't an issue. And, we don't have issues. If this is a real relationship, there's no issues, which is also a fixed mindset. You guys, a great book is The Fixed Mindset by Carolyn somebody, whatever. Anyway, I was just throwing it out there. Going back to the anxious attachment style, I have been anxious before. So I understand the feeling of anxiousness and really wanting somebody to respond to you right away. You want validation. You want affirmation. You want to know that this story that you're playing about this person in your head, that this person could be your person, is true. So you're reaching out in hopes that to continue to feed yourself this story, right? And being anxious. You just want the validation. You just want some reassurance. All it takes is a quick text. And I know but for him, I could tell he was really telling himself some stories in his head. Apparently, because I had gone quiet, I'm not going to use the ghost word, because I had gone quiet for 10 minutes, 16 minutes. I don't know. I don't even think it was that long. However long it was, because I had gone quiet after halibut, he decided that I was gone for good in his brain. And it was like, all right, I'm over this. So then self-sabotage and self-protection starts coming in. As an anxious attachment, you want a safe face, and you also want the other person to come running after you, right? It's kind of like, I want you to validate me by showing me that I'm worthy of you, right? And that's what he was doing in this exact moment. But instead of running, I don't run after people. Avoidance will do the same thing. They want you to run after them. I never run after people. Even as an avoidant, I never want anybody to run after me or expected them to. Don't do it. We don't chase. Because you know what happens when you chase people. They usually run even further. Now, as an anxious attachment style, it's usually the opposite. Sometimes they'll come closer to you because they're like, oh, I feel safe, you reassured me. But for me, I'm like, you need to understand that there's a problem here. And I'm not your problem, okay? So in that instance where he tells me, you could have just told me blah, blah, blah. And, basically he told me he was out the door. And I told him, I said, I think you need to take a breather. How about you take an hour to calm down and think about it and then come back and talk to me? And then he responds, oh, don't worry about it. I'm going to be the same person in an hour. Kind of like have a nice life. And I came back and I said, you're self-sabotaging right now because I told you to take an hour and you decided not to take it. And then he goes, damn it, I always F up. It's like, I always mess up the good things. And he's like, never mind, I'm out of here. And I was like, I told you to take an hour. And he's like, but if you really wanted to talk to me, you would have told me, that you really wanted to talk to me or something. And I was like, I'm still here talking to you. I wasn't going to sit there and lie to him and be like, oh my God, I love talking to you. But the fact that I'm still here, the fact that I didn't block and delete him like he said a lot of women did, to me, I felt like that was enough reassurance for someone I had just met, number one, to at least let him know that I was a safe space for him. I didn't owe this man anything. However, I do feel like I did deserve to give this man a little bit of grace only because I know how it feels to be anxious. I think if I didn't understand how it felt to be an anxious attachment style or how it felt to be an avoidant attachment style and to be an empath on top of that, where I can really go back and feel those emotions of what it feels like in those moments. Maybe if I was anyone else, I wouldn't show the same grace. Maybe I would block and delete like everybody told me to do. But for me, I felt like I owed, at least in this space, him the grace to know that I wasn't running just because he was having a tantrum, because that's what we're going to call it. He was literally throwing a tantrum. However, we can also call it him having an anxious moment. It was very anxious, very manic almost, And to be fair and honest with you, I know he kind of bowed out himself, and I was actually grateful for that. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I would have eventually had I needed to, but it would have been in a calm, sincere, hopefully understanding conversation about why I don't think it's going to work, why I think he needs to work on himself a little bit more. But the funny part about this is he's not the only person with this type of attachment style. He's not the only person out here who's dating right now who gets anxious. On my next episode, I will talk to you guys about me dating an avoidant and what that looked like. Being a past avoidant, being a past anxious attachment, kind of that pendulum swing from one to the other and just kind of basically going with emotionally unavailable people has been very interesting. I've only dated 2 people, or basically, let me not say dating. I've only gone out on 2 dates with people since that whole ghosting incident that happened 2 weeks ago with my ghoster, CJ. But since then, it seems as though I'm still attracting emotionally unavailable people. And with that, I usually have to ask myself, is there something about me that's attracted to these people? And the truth is, I don't think so. The truth is, I don't know these people enough for, let me turn the light on right quick. This one kind of washes me out a little bit. So, yeah. So the truth is, I don't know these people enough before I go out with them to be able to decide, if this is an emotionally available person or not. I think that's the beauty and the problem with dating. Is that you really don't know what you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates. You don't really know what you're going to get. Too many people probably not even old enough for that reference. I haven't even seen that movie in forever. But, if you know, you know. But that all being said, if you are an anxious attachment style, like the guy that I was dating, there are a few things that you can do. Number one is you have to set healthy boundaries in your relationship. I think it's very important to know up front that being anxious is your issue. Like they say, in order to solve a problem, you must first acknowledge that the problem exists. So for me, I would say, if this guy sounds anything like you, and most people be like, oh no, that dude sounds nothing like me. He's super anxious. He is definitely at the top of anxiousness. It may not be as severe. Mine wasn't as severe. I had to get to a point where I just had to tell myself, okay, this guy's probably at work. He can't text me back immediately. I need to calm down, maybe at least wait until 5 o'clock before I get super anxious, or like double text and ask, like, did you get my text? Are you ghosting me? You know, to whatever that effect. I used to have a little bit of anxiousness when it came to texting and not hearing back. Not realizing that there are people who are super busy. Like, and most people be like, oh, they're never that busy not to send you a text. But sometimes people like me, I go out, I'm not on my phone. I am enjoying my moment. If I'm in a board meeting or in a meeting, I'm not on my phone because that's rude to who I'm with. So at least give them 4 to 5 hours, I feel like, before the anxiousness sets in. If you're one of those people that get super anxious, I've learned to calm that down. But that took some work too. So setting a boundary and like letting someone know up front, like, you know, there are times when I can get a little bit beside myself when I haven't heard from you. You know, I start to worry. There's ways to approach the anxiousness too when you text. That's one thing I've also learned. If I get anxious about something, instead of saying, how come you haven't texted me? How come you haven't called me? I'll text instead, you know, how's everything going at work? You know, are you really busy right now? Seems like you could be swamped. You know, like, hopefully I can do something a little later to cheer you up. Taking something that comes across very negative and trying to flip it into something positive so you don't come across as anxious when you're writing. You can still feel the same way, which I have, but just flipping it around to being like, you know, oh, busy day, huh? Like, I'm sorry for you. Hopefully I can make it up to you when you get home. Something along those lines where, you know, haven't heard from them. And then they're kind of like, oh, you know, they understand, especially if you're dealing with an avoidant. And that's a whole nother thing that we'll talk about later. But just being careful with how you phrase things when you text is definitely important. Also understanding your attachment style. You know, the fact that you know that you seek reassurance, that you overanalyze behaviors, or that you fear abandonment. Being aware of these tendencies helps you to manage them in a healthier way. And then I will say, I talked about communicating your needs clearly. I think there's 2 things that you need to do, which is, well, I think these things help me the most. And that is moving slowly in a new relationship to kind of help your anxiousness. Be careful of like just going all in too fast. Sometimes even I have had to pull back. When I went from avoidant to anxious, when I started dating again after 5 years, I became anxious for some reason because I felt I wasn't avoidant anymore. So as an avoidant, you push away people. And as anxious, you kind of run towards them and kind of jump in too fast, too soon. And that's what I did in my last 2 relationships. I think I was so wanting this to work that I pushed myself as hard as I could to make sure that I got chosen, like very early on. It was like, oh, look at me, choose me. I'm here. Like, I'm here to love you. Like, let me love you. And that's the problem. That's why it comes across as love bombing sometimes, because we just want to love so bad, so hard, so soon, too soon, to the point where you haven't really met, you really don't know who this person is. You've just fantasized this relationship that you want to have so bad. So what I had to learn to do was like pump the brakes, and be like, yeah, we're not doing this. I'm not doing this. I'm going to temper my emotions as best I can. When I feel myself kind of going head over heels with this person, I'm going to withdraw just a little bit and find something else to do. Now, that's taking on more of an avoidant behavior, but you're taking some small pieces of just learning how to pull back all your energy into trying to pour it into one person, pour it into yourself, into a project. A lot of times you don't have nothing else to do. You need to find something else to do. Find something else to do, get involved in that, and then you should be okay. All right? Because you need the time to see who this person really is. Around 2.5, 3 months to 4 months, and avoidance is going to take off. no matter what. Because remember, when the vulnerability comes, that person's going to run off. So you want to make sure that by month 3 and 4, by the time you're ready to be super vulnerable, the avoidant isn't like, oh, vulnerability? Oh, heck no, bye, right? Because you've already invested that time. But if you're like taking your time, just kind of getting to know that person, tempering it down, don't rush things too fast, then you guys are going to be on a slower level. And you need to come up with ways to kind of either meditate, find relaxation techniques. I like to journal. Journaling helps me a lot. Finding something else to do, writing. I love to write. Whatever your thing is, pour into that instead of that person. Pour into yourself. And I promise you, if you can do that, or at least focus on that, or try to do that, and not make this person your whole wide world, you'll be okay. All right? Because that's what happens when you make someone your whole wide world. You get anxious because now this person's your world. And if you don't have this person, your world crumbles. So make sure that that person doesn't become your world. Okay? Does that make sense? Cool. I think that's enough tips for my anxious attachment styles, given I've shared my story about dating one. I have shared that I used to be one. You could probably find my anxiousness attachment also emotionally unavailable too, because, sometimes when you're finding these people, it's because you also don't want to be vulnerable. Avoidants get a bad rap because it's very clear they don't want to be vulnerable. It's very clear they're running away from emotional stuff, right? But sometimes what we fail to realize is that anxious attachment is emotionally unavailable too, because they're choosing these types because it protects them from having to be vulnerable. Now this person becomes the bad guy because they're not in tune with me, which isn't fair, because someone else, again, should not be the reason for your happiness. Someone else should not be your world, so that your world doesn't crumble just because that person isn't there. All right. I said it twice. So that you got it. If you didn't get it, then, I don't know, write me an email, lovelyinkmedia@gmail.com. You can also hit me up on my IG account, which is Nikki D. Lovely as well. And if you just have any questions or concerns or any topics that you think that I should talk about, make sure that you email me or send me a DM through my IG as well. And until then, I think we've talked enough. For now, I've talked your little head off. But I hope you've gotten a better understanding of at least, anxious attachment and some things you can do to help it. At least what helped me to kind of get out of that void of being anxious. I'm still figuring it out. We're figuring this thing out together. You can see I'm still dating and I'm still sharing my stories because I think it's important to kind of share what I've learned along the way. Depending on where you are in your healing journey, you may be above me. You could still be below me. You could be, still finding your way. Or hell, you may not have even known anything about being anxious or avoidant. And we're figuring this all out together. But anyway, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you listening to me because I know I'll talk your head off. And until next week, when we talk about my date with an avoidant, and I'm also going to have a special guest a little later on. But again, I thank you for being here. I thank you for being patient with me through my little 7-month hiatus. And I hope that you will come back to join me again next week. All right? Thank you. And I'm out.
Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Hello Me, It's Me with Nikki D. Lovely. Just remember, you can't change who you were yesterday, but you can always learn and grow to become a better version of yourself today. So make sure you do the mental work today for the future you tomorrow, and I will see you next week. And in the meantime, make sure that you check me out on my Instagram at Nikki D. Lovely or _broke_mama. You can also find me at nikkidlovely.com and check out my book, No F Boys Allowed. I also have a poetry book coming out pretty soon, so just a little shameless plug. But either way, I will see you guys next time, and thanks again.